go. So, okay. My daughter Ellen was staying with me for the summer, and one day while Ellen was grooming her two tiny Shih Tzus, named Dexter and Gidget, I innocently picked up the phone and in a clear voice said, "Good boy." It was as if the start of an adventure for Ellen and me. However, the dogs stayed home. The voice on the other end inquired, "Miss Kerry, Disney is about to release a remastered DVD of Peter Pan. We're coming up to the 50th anniversary of the opening of the film, and we're planning a press junket where we invite journalists from all over the globe. Would you be interested in being part of the event? We'd be flying over to London and..." Well, it took me perhaps a split second before I answered in a much maybe and maybe like, well, yes, I'd be interested. They said they'd call me back for a meeting at the studio, and I said, "Oh, thank you for the moment," and hung the phone and then screamed, "Ellen, Ellen, we're going to London!" That's how it all started. The biggest problem that I had at the meetings with people was keeping track of the people who were working on this launch. You see, Ellen and I met with a senior VP of Worldwide Marketing, senior manager of domestic marketing, director of publicity home entertainment, manager of international publicity, and it got a little worried when we got directives from someone called Jarrell Borges and Justin Sandoval. As wonderful as all these people were, and they were, we both skewed during the preparations and actual travel. You see, everyone looked to me for leadership. After all, I was an old-timer in show business. But I mean, this was big stuff, and I was in over my head. The Disney execs knew the details of what they were up to, and Ellen and I get snatches, just small pieces of information that often didn't dovetail with anything that we knew. And the only way we kept anything straight was because of one remarkable woman named Mindy Johnson. Mindy gave the two of us hope that if we followed her advice, there was a real chance we could avoid bringing any disgrace to the name Disney. So we climbed aboard the Virgin Atlantic Airlines at first class with a bed, our own TV, our own little area where they would bring us food and so on. And then they deposited us when we got to London to at the Dorchester. Now, my dear, I was told that the penthouse at the Dorchester got $22,000 a night to stay at the penthouse. So we didn't want to break the budget, so Ellen and I decided to stay in one room together, which I don't know whether Disney appreciated it or not. But anyway, at the press junket, I just wanted to tell you this story. There were 60 journalists that came from all around the world, and we sat in a big house in London that they had done over to look like the Darling House. Catherine Beaumont was in the salon, the living room. I was in the large den, and they would come in and chat with us. But this is what I wanted to tell you. I found out that, do any of you know the story of Marilyn Monroe and the rumor that she was the original reference model for Tinkerbell? Do some of you know that? No, I'm not going into it, but the interesting part to me was every pressman who sat down at press meeting had to promise to ask me 20 questions before they talked about Marilyn Monroe. I really think that was amazing. So we had a wonderful time, a little over London, and then we got on the Virgin Atlantic Airlines again. And as we were flying back, when I was stretched out in bed, this lady came up to me and said, "I beg your pardon, would you care to have a manicure or a pedicure?" And I looked up at her and I said, "What?" She said, "I work for Virgin Atlantic Airlines." And I said, "Well, if that's what it takes to be a virgin."
Margaret, Kerry, ladies and gentlemen.
Woo!
And Susan and Bob are
sitting there thinking, and I have to follow that. I did have a friend of mine who met you a couple of weeks ago, and they contacted me. They said their little girl said, "I met Tinkerbell's grandmother." Which was a very positive comment. And then I will answer real quick, because I asked it earlier. When I told you I asked questions online, what we should ask. One question is, are you available? Yes. Okay, so I won't embarrass the person who asked that question out loud. You know who you are. Next, I'd like to ask a couple of questions of Susan Egan, but one of the questions came from one of the folks that's here. Jeffrey, where are you? Jeffrey, we're going to ask you a Jeffrey question, because I thought this was a terrific question. Jeffrey wants to know, since you're a Southern California native, did Disney have a large role in your life as a child, and as a performer with Broadway credits, how do you choose between New York and Los Angeles?
Oh, that's really two very good questions. Yes, I grew up in Seal Beach, so 15 minutes away from the park. Hey, Seal Beachers over there. You can tell by my tan. And it's funny because growing up, all of my friends worked at Disney. Everybody, they were auditioning to be face characters, or they were in the parades, and it was kind of the job that everybody had in high school. In fact, my brother was one of the, in his lederhosen, do they still have them climbing the
Sadly, no.
No, it was a great job for him. So he wore lederhosen, and he would climb the Matterhorn, and he would have to climb the Matterhorn in a half an hour, then he would have 2 hours off, and he would play basketball inside the Matterhorn. There's a half court. And so for him, it was the greatest job ever. And I never worked for Disney. But of course, it had an influence on me. Once a year, my mom, who was the greatest mom in the entire world, she would wake the three of us up, the kids, on a school day and say, "You're not going to school today. Today we're going to Disneyland." And we never knew when it was going to happen, but it would happen once a year. And we'd go on a school day because then there weren't any lines. And what I realize now at 42 and a mother myself was that, it wasn't my mom treating us. It was my mom, ditching all of her own responsibilities. And she loved roller coasters, so she didn't want to wait in line either. Now I understand. But yeah, it was pretty great. And then in college, I actually was cast, one of my first Screen Actor Guild jobs was the 35th anniversary of Disneyland. They cast a tour guide to take David Johansen, Buster Poindexter around the park, and that was me. Oh. And I was terrible. But it was super fun because we shot the special at 4 o'clock in the morning when the park was closed, and all of my friends were in the parade, and I was finally working for Disney, which I always wanted to do.
Very good, thanks. And then comparing between New York and Los Angeles scenes?
I'm a California girl, and so in between every Broadway show, I tended to drift west again, and I worked a lot in television and film as well. And I would go back every time I got another Broadway show, but again, I'm a Southern California girl. I actually live in Orange County again now, and I'm raising my kids here, and we have season park passes.
All right. So watch for Susan with her children in the middle of the week teaching school. Another good question that I got online, and I thought I'm really fascinated by this one. You've had the opportunity to be on a live show, live Broadway. You also had the chance to be a voice with an animated film. What do you prefer, transforming your entire self for a Broadway production, or letting yourself loose with the liberties inside of a sound booth?
That's an excellent question as well. My dream definitely was to work on Broadway, and I almost didn't even go to the Beauty and the Beast audition because I didn't think I was pretty enough to go, and my agent said, just go because you've never met that casting director. And thank goodness I listened and went and was lucky enough to be cast. And that was my first Broadway show, and to originate something was pretty spectacular, and to work with all of the incredible talents that Disney had at its disposal to create the first Broadway production was life-changing. But I have to say, except for you two, that performance is lost. It's done at 10:30 at night, and hopefully it's living in the minds of people. But to be part of a Disney animated feature, as you know, is to be part of something timeless that my children have seen and their children will see. And so getting to do the character of Meg was amazing on that level. And to also watch over the 2.5-year process of making the movie, to watch Ken Duncan, who was the lead animator of Meg, to watch that progress, I just sat really in awe. The other thing that I loved about doing animation was that in real life I always played the good girl, the sweet one, the kind one, the nice one. I'm never cast as anything sexy. But in a booth, when no one has to look at me, it's kind of fun to be sassy and sexy and, you know, jut my eyebrows out and everything. The problem was I was doing Beauty and the Beast at the same time in Los Angeles, and there was one day, I was recording Meg during the day and I was playing Belle at night, and Alan Menken came to the show one night and got very angry, which he rarely does, and I mean, for him, anger is like, I need to talk with you. Like, he's really upset. And he took me back to the dressing room at the end of the show. He's like, you have to stop it. And I said, stop it? I don't know what you mean. He's like, you have to stop it. And I said, what? He's like, your Meg is creeping into your Belle, and it has to stop. He's like, you're jutting your hip out, and it's like, I'm waiting for you to tell the Beast to shave, you know? He was absolutely right. You know, the thing was is that I was very much acting as Meg, and I mean acting as Belle. That was the acting job, and Meg is kind of where I live. So I had to take Meg out of Belle, and then everybody was happy.
Scoot my chair away from you a little bit there. Susan Egan, everyone, thank you. Bob, I got a couple of questions for you. Bob, you've probably seen all around the park. You've seen Bob in a lot. You've seen virtually any Disney history video. You've seen Bob pop on up, and for very good reason, because he is such an important player in the experience of the theme parks. And I have to say I'm a big fan of Disney in general, but my heart is really with the theme park. So I know a lot about you, and I know a lot about you, but I know way too much about Bob, and I'm very anxious about his as well. A couple of good questions for you, Bob, that were given to me. Were there any ideas or projects that you were working on either for Disneyland or Disney World that you had to scrap that just didn't quite work out?
Well, I'm honored that you and I are the bookends with two lovely girls here.
It's the beauty in the middle and the beast at the end. So, yeah.
Oh, there's the real thing. All right. Yeah, it's really neat being the old guy to follow the two girls. Oh, thank you very much. Oddly enough, there's very few things that really didn't get into a Disney park. Through the development at WPI and of course before that Wet Enterprises, because for every attraction you see, we probably had 30 ideas in that general area of doing things. Only the people that were buried in the archives of the dead drawings at the WPI can appreciate how many designs we came up with that got down to the few that we did finally build. The reason for that was Walt gave so much thought to what we would do and what we would not do on an attraction. So by the time something got up to where we were really getting serious about it, it had already been very well fleshed out so that that was going to be a very, very doable job. Out of that group, there would usually be one that really was, this is going to be such a winner, that there was no more questions. It was just a case of just execute the whole thing, whether it was a $2 million job or a $100 million job. But once in a while, people will ask, they say, well, there's got to be at least something that didn't work. Many of you have never heard the words Bob-along boat. How many in this room have heard the word Bob-along boat? Aha, oh, what? Oh, well, he cheated. He runs this outfit. Now, that's an example, because there are very few things other than one unnamed ride here that didn't really work, which I won't mention.
You can't do that. You can't tease us like that.
Oh, well, it had the same initials as the Rolls Royce. So what was that? Anyway, there's this little boat called a bob-along boat, which is going to be like a small boat about the size of this round table here, where a family of four could rent that and take a picnic and go out for the day on the lake down in Florida. But unfortunately, the boat was what I would call a committee boat. In other words, just bounced back and forth between Disneyland and Walt Disney World, different management levels. So there was not really an inspired job. Then they went down to George McGinnis to work on that. And you all know George McGinnis did a design, and then the thing got handed off to me, and then we actually tooled up and made a full production version, and we only made one boat. We did a lot of testing here in California. We took it down to Florida, and it turned out the darn thing was doomed to never work, but we couldn't get anybody's attention because it was an executive order type project coming down, jammed into everybody, rather than an idea that just floated up and became logical. So if you ever read or hear anything about the Bob-along boat, that is the only one that I know of that got that far and turned out to be a total operational failure. And it was a cute thing. I got a lot of really nice black and white photographs of it, but it got buried so fast in some gravel pit, I don't that was in it. That's a long answer to your question, but that's the deal.
No, it's great. And did it make it into your book? Is there going to be a drawing of Bob along?
No, I think, I don't even think I mentioned it in the book. Oh, by the way, I'm glad you brought up the book.
My pleasure. Let's talk about Bob's new book, Design.
All right. Oh, this, you see this tower here? That's called everybody's familiar with the famous Gurr, which was here at ESPN, what, a year ago? It was on the menu, by the way. This is called, they call it the Gurr Tower of Design. You remember Bill Coacher, the guy that built that slow-moving blue monorail that was at the 1313 Club event about a year and a half ago? Anybody remember that? Ooh, you have not been paying attention. Yeah, go on the internet and type in Bob Gurr and images, and you'll find this goofy blue monorail. The guy actually built it. Well, same guy. His name is Bill Couture. You want to know a Disney fan who was really super enthusiastic. Not only did he build that monorail, which had a button that you push and it would make Gurtini martinis while you're driving it. No, it's true. It's true. A week ago at Disneyana, he shows up because he says, "Oh, you're going to sell a book. Well, you need to attract some attention somehow." So here's this thing. It's got a rotating tower of designs, and it's got the flashing lights and everything, and it's supposed to lead the book sales. That's the commercial.
We have time for one more question for Bob.
Yeah.
Bob, as an urban planner, I'm always fascinated about how forward-leaning you have been in transportation technologies, sort of thinking outside the box of where we could go as opposed to what we've experienced. When you look over the horizon today, are there any types of transportation technologies that you're excited about? Something that if you had a chance and somebody came to you and said, "I want you to work on this project," you would say, "Yes, that's my next calling," just the way that you changed the world with the monorail and people mover and other vehicles.
Yes, the inspiration is something a lot of people already know about. If you go to Shanghai Airport and you want to go to downtown Shanghai, well, it's going to cost you about $7, and it's going to take maybe 6 minutes, and you're going to go 17 miles, and it has no wheels. It's called the maglev. Now, visualize going from LAX to downtown LA at 320 miles per hour without wheels. Just try it. You can't even get to downtown LA for $50 in 50 minutes.
But could you do?
But it's called maglev. Maglev, because everybody's inspired by the monorail, but visualize something that is super sleek and really fast and really silent, and all the things you could do with that, particularly for long distance transportation. It already exists, and I would love to have been on a design team to design more vehicles like that.
I got to add, if you really think about it, Bob, in your particular case, you sort of invented the maglev railroad. If you take the monorail, or you take the people mover in Florida, unlike the one here, which was rubber tires, the one in Florida uses magnets to push you along, although it's on steel rails. But it's still the same technology with the magnet propulsion vehicle, correct?
Yes, exactly the same principle. That one runs at about 10 miles per hour. It's been running down there forever. It's probably the lowest maintenance vehicle we've got in the entire company. It's a flat track. Many of you have ridden it down there. Super slick, super silent, just simple and nice. In fact, I'm for any vehicle that has no moving parts. And I don't have to design it, and we don't have to repair it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bob Gurr.
When you say that, my car blew up, and all the moving parts that had to be fixed on it is absolutely wonderful. And I went to see whether I should buy a newer car, and As I say, I don't want to buy a car that's smarter than I am. I mean, I never saw so many buttons in my life, and you push the wrong button, and I'm sure you eject. So the simpler that a machine works is all for me. My car is a 2000 Daewoo, and it goes forward and it goes back and it stops when I want it to. What more can you want? And that's what happens with what you did. I'll vote for you anytime.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I'm honored to be asked to be able to ask you.
Well then, I've got to say, isn't he a wonderful host? Are asked to do this quite often, and sometimes the person who's asking the question says, so what's happening? You know, and there you are. You have just been absolutely wonderful. Your book is over there. You all come and see it. Bob says the book will be out soon, so you can check with him. I have pictures and DVDs over here for you to come on over and take a peek. And Susan has wonderful pictures, but on top of that, come on over and see us, because we would love to chat with you. You're our family. You really are.